Tarajia, how are you?
Very well, how are you?
Fantastic, we made it.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries. We're new at this, so.
Yeah, exactly. New World Order.
I know.
So you're in Mexico City at Pujol right now?
We're actually in Casateo. Casateo is like our little lab. We also use it as a residence for guests that come to Mexico City. And we have a small kitchen here, so we're cooking from here.
Lovely.
How about yourself?
I'm in New York City right now.
Nice.
Considering going by Atla later to get a margarita to go or something like that. On my bicycle.
Yeah, I miss New York. I don't think it's been, I think now 3 months since I was there, and I really miss it. So hopefully I can be back in the next few weeks.
I hope so.
Yes.
I hope so. So tell us what you're cooking today. Show us some ingredients and the crab.
Yes. So we're making a crab tostada for the ingredients. Obviously, we need to start with the tostada. So there's some tostadas that are already made. We're gonna make some from scratch. But this is important that you make them the day before. You can't make tostadas. Actually, the best way to make tostadas is just you buy tortillas, whatever is left over. You just pop them in the oven, and then the next day you have tostadas. It's super simple. But how you make the tostadas is you have the masa. This is corn masa. What we've done to this masa is to have the flavor of the crab, is added some of the crab stock. So instead of mixing the masa with water, we're using crab stock to make the masa. So that's why you see it's a little more orange than normal. And then you want to grab a ball, around 30 grams, and you want to roll it with your hands. This is like playing. This reminds me of when I was a kid. Play-Doh, so it's and then your hands smell beautiful afterwards. So I think this is the most fun part of this dish is making your own tostada. So if you have availability, you don't need to grind your own corn. There's good quality masa harina now in most countries. So you can buy the ground nixtamalized corn flour and then just rehydrate it with the crab if you don't have access to corn. Which is the dry corn, not the fresh corn, obviously, which that's the one you use for tortillas. And then we're gonna make a tortilla. So you come over here. You need a tortilla press. And this is Jesus. Hi. Jesus is the resident chef here, so he's gonna be helping us so I can. Because I'm not good at talking and cooking. They told us in cooking school never talk when you're cooking. So. We're gonna make a tortilla. So if you can see it here, and then it has 2 plastic sheets. The plastic sheets will help you not to stick. And then once you have the tortilla, you want to put it into the comal. Put it in your hand. And then you put it into the comal. Right? So this is how you make a simple tortilla. And the difference between the tostada and the tortilla is the amount of cooking that you're doing to the tortilla. So if you leave the tortilla, like imagine if it was a piece of steak, if it's medium rare, it would be a tortilla. Then like medium well would be a tlayuda, and well done is a tostada. When the tortilla is a little, when it's soft, you can taste the nixtamalization, whereas when you start cooking the tortilla, you start developing more the flavor of toasted corn. The tortilla will immediately start to lift from the sides, and that's when you want to turn it. It's also important that the comal, if you don't have a comal, obviously you can do this on a saute pan, preferably if it's a non-stick, because or a cast iron, because it does need to get really hot. If the pan is not able to get hot, it will not serve the purpose of the tortilla. And then we have this little wire mesh. This is made. This is used in Oaxaca to keep the tostadas warm or keep the tlayudas warm. So you always put it in the corner so the heat is not too extreme. And then the tortilla, you turn it 3 times, and then you put it into the wire mesh, and that's how you make the tostada. So you see, once it pops, they say you can get married. So I'm okay to get married now.
Okay.
Then the second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna peel some tomatoes. The tomatoes basically need to be taken the skin off. This is very simple, and I think most people have done that once in their life. So you just take the core out. And try to, now is the beautiful time for tomatoes. So try to use something from your farmer's market, not from a supermarket. I know most farmer's markets now are difficult to access, but if you have access, I think it makes a huge difference. And this we will only put into hot boiling water, and then refresh them in ice water. You can, when you throw them into the hot water, you can sing the Adams song, remember? ¿Cómo se llama? Los Locos Adams. You know that
I definitely want you to sing it.
I can't. You don't want me singing, do you? I've tried even in karaoke, it's really bad. But you put it into the water, and then sing a quick song from your childhood, like Happy Birthday or something. 30 seconds, they're out, and then you peel them, and then you have the roasted tomato, like the peeled tomato. So once you take the skin off, we're gonna smoke them. For smoking at home, you don't need a smoking gun or a smoker. You can just smoke with a few good chips, and you just burn them and then pop it in the oven, and it will smoke inside of the oven. So we're gonna do that now. I think Patricia is gonna help us do that. So this is the ice water for the tomatoes that we just popped, the song that I didn't sing. But you just refresh them in the water, and then keep them in the cold water for a little bit, and they do get cold, because if not, they'll carry overcooking. And then we have the smoked wood chips. We're using bamboo right now, but you can use whatever wood chip you can.
Wow, what a great...
I think actually what Jesus did is find some bamboo skewers and then just put them into the fire directly. And then what you want to do is, once they start burning, put them back into a container and then cover it up so they start smoking. I'm gonna let them get a little bit more.
Chef, I think a cooking show is in your future. We've only been talking for a few minutes, and you've already lit something on fire, and you're showing us a new technique for it.
Actually, a few years ago, I had a cooking show in a Latin American TV chain, but I quit because they wouldn't let me have Jesus on my show. I don't like cooking by myself. I think it's important for us to
Absolutely.
cook. You never cook by yourself in a restaurant, right? So,
no.
I told them that, and they told me, no, this is a cooking show. I can't cook. No, it's so boring to do it by yourself. So you just put it inside of the oven, and then it'll smoke, because the wood chips. It's important that you put the fire out. Don't want to burn your kitchen. Correct?
So you just put it out.
And now we're gonna start with the crab meat. Yeah, you cover the fire so the smoke process starts, and then you just pop them into a cold oven with the tomatoes right next to them, and then leave them there for between 10 minutes, 5 minutes, depending on how smoked you want them. You can also do that prior. And I think this is the beautiful thing about this recipe is you can do the tostadas the day before. We cook the crab the day before, and then the day that you're actually having dinner, you can just enjoy dinner instead of having to cook for hours and then sit down. No, I think.
Yeah.
I like personally, because if not, you're exhausted by the time you're sitting down.
Yeah, and you want to be able to entertain your guests. We're looking forward to a time when we can have our friends over again, right? And interact with them.
Absolutely. So this is the crab meat. We got the yellow crab live yesterday. We didn't want to do that in live social media, but basically you just throw them in the hot water. With some aromatics, whatever you prefer. We use bay leaf and a little bit of the leaves from the celeriac since we were using it, but you can use whatever herb you want. Obviously some salt, some pepper, some garlic and some onion. And then you pop the crab open and then you take the meat out. I like yellow crab because it's sweeter than like a regular crab meat that we get in Mexico. This one comes from Ensenada. So Ensenada, for those of us that are not familiar, is on the Pacific coast in the northern part of Mexico. Literally, it's an hour away from Tijuana, which is the border town with San Diego. So it's colder water for Mexico standards. And if you taste it, it's very elegant, very subtle. It has a little bit of sweetness, and it's very plump, which is why we like the crab meat. So we're gonna basically make I'm gonna dress the crab with a few things. So here's the bowl. And this you can always try. I think the most important thing when you're cooking is that you're eating, because there's no way of knowing with your side if you need to add something, unless you're like extremely talented and have like superpowers that your eyes know how much salt you put on things. And actually, we got a little coral from the crab, which is like a really it means we got lucky. So I'm gonna add a little bit. It's not on the recipe that we sent, but since we have it, might as well use it. And I think this is very important, trying to use the entire product, not only with crab, but also, for example, with the celeriac, not just using the root, but also using the leaves.
Can you tell us a little bit about where, not just the origin of the crab, where it comes from, but how you choose your fishermen, how you decide, okay, I'm going to go with yellow crab? Is it just the flavor, or are there other elements that come into play? We know our fishermen, our fishmongers personally, and I think that is the best way to get good quality fish. We've actually eaten in their houses. Ezequiel travels with us often to parts of Mexico, and we go fishing every time. For example, I've gone fishing with him in Los Cabos for a few times. I visited him and his family in Ensenada, and we have a really close relationship. So I think that's the best way to get good quality fish, and fish that is sourced properly, is by knowing the people that are actually selling you the fish. And they are the ones that have the relationships with the fishermen. Another purveyor that we have is Eric Herrero. Eric used to be head chef of Pujol for 5 years, and he moved back to his town of Veracruz. Because he was working with Ezequiel, he fell in love with that mentality of training fishermen to treat fish properly and keeping fish properly until the restaurant. So he's also sourcing now some fish from us, but he's in the Gulf of Mexico in Veracruz. So, for example, the soft shell crabs we get from Eric in Veracruz, and this yellow crab we got from Ezequiel in Ensenada. So for the crab, we're gonna just basically, si nos ayudas, así que we're basically just gonna add a little olive oil with the crab meat, and then I'm gonna chop up some cilantro and some celery to mix inside of there so it tastes properly.
Can you think of a crab that is this a crab that might wind up on the menus in New York City, or is this something you would serve exclusively in Mexico because of the proximity to where it's fished and sourced?
In New York, we try always to use East Coast shellfish, just because of transportation and sustainability issues. But we would definitely do something similar. I think that's the beauty of Cosme and Pujol. The technique is similar, but the flavor profile is entirely different because we're in a different location. And I think that's also why Mexicans love going to Cosme, is because there's no restaurant like Cosme in Mexico. Because there we find other kinds of fish, other kinds of vegetables, and that I think adds to the authenticity and uniqueness of each restaurant. So I'm gonna mix this up to have the crab meat, and then here we got celery puree. This is basically just the celery we sauteed in a pan. You can add a little oil, some water, and then cover it up till it's softens up, and then you puree it with some of these are pickled jalapenos, so kind of like Persian limes. We basically put them in salt, so if you see
wow.
Now the flavor develops very nicely, and then dehydrate them. So we basically puree the celery with the jalapenos into a cream. So this is the cream of the celery, and this will serve us for the base of the tostada. I'm also gonna add a little bit of lime zest, lemon zest into the crab.
Is there something else that might work other than celeriac if somebody couldn't find that from their local market? Another root vegetable, or
Yeah, you can do it with beans, for example. Make like a bean paste. So you can use white beans or black beans. That would be a more traditional paste for a tostada, and I think everybody has access to it. So this is the roasted tomatoes with the smoke, and you want the smoke to be present. You don't want it to be light, no, because it's not good enough. And then we're gonna slice the tomatoes thinly to layer them in the tostada.
Chef, how long did you cook the crab for with the aromatics in the water?
Around 10 to 15 minutes. It's more important that the crab floats than the actual time.
Okay.
So, because also the size of the crab might vary, or the species that you're able to get. It's important that you also that when you don't overcook it.
Of course.
It's super important, because if not, it just tastes like it squishes in your teeth and it's horrible. I don't know if you have that experience when it's too dry. So for the tostada, what we're gonna do is basically add some of the puree to layer. So this is the other thing. When you're making tacos or tostadas, you have to act quickly, and eat quickly, because it's a little bit like a nigiri in Japan. You don't want to let your nigiri sit down for a while because the rice gets cold, and the fish cooks. The tostada gets soggy quickly. So if you're making tostadas, it's important. If I had people coming home, what I would do is just leave everything in the table, and then each person can make their own tostada. Because if you're making 10 tostadas, by the time you finish the last one, the first one is already soggy. So it's important.
Do you have a source in Mexico that lets Mexico in particular, or South America, know what the best seafood sources are, what's the most sustainable? We have some in America. We use Ethic Ocean. We use the Monterey Bay Aquarium. But is there something specific to Mexico that you recommend?
Unfortunately, here we don't have an app. I do use the Monterey Aquarium app myself sometimes. But I think here, and also because of global warming, the situation is changing drastically year from year. So seasonality is changing. So sometimes when you speak to the fishermen, they tell you, like, right now there's no tuna and there should be tuna, and then shouldn't be any tuna, there is. So I think it's best if you have that communication, because things are also changing now with global warming and the trends and the migration of fish. I think it's also important that we use small quantities. This is something that is present in Mexican culture. When you use an animal protein, you're not using a huge amount. You're using a very small amount, and it's mostly vegetables, which is what we're doing here. So this tostada can have no crab or have very little crab, and it would still be beautiful. So I think that's a good way of eating fish sustainably, is to lower the intake that you're putting into a dish, and also using different species and not always using the same. This crab, Sophia told us that the crab is collected all year round because they have traps. So whenever they walk into a trap, they get the crab, and it's year round. So there's no sustainability purposes. So with the tomatoes, we're just gonna layer 3 tomatoes into the tostada. And then add some crab meat on top. Want to taste just to make sure that it's okay. Shot.
But I love what you said about not depending on any one source for choosing sustainable seafood, because it is ever changing. There was a very interesting story about sea urchins in the Pacific that became invasive. And so for a while, eating uni that was from like the Santa Barbara area was the most sustainable thing you could eat, because they were eating all of the kelp. But it's an ever-changing thing, and I think that just reiterates why it's so important to speak with your farmer, or in this case, your fisherman, and have a direct relationship, ask questions, and don't get stuck on one ingredient, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and then if it looks weird, it's a good idea to use it, because if you're familiar with it, it means it's probably being overfished. So this is the tostada, and then we're going to put it into the dish.
It's so beautiful, Chef. Can you tell me a little bit about your plating, even though it's off sustainable seafood as a topic? It's so gorgeous.
Well, this barro, the clay is made in Oaxaca, so it's amazing. And then it's just very simple. The idea is to make sure, I think with the tostada, what is important is that kind of like soup, that you never add anything that is larger than the spoonful size. I think with a tostada, what you're trying to make sure is that it's practical to eat. No, if the tostada is too big or too tall, then you can't put it in your mouth, and it'll be awkward to eat it. So that's what we're trying to do, is something that is
easily eaten.
Well, it's gorgeous, as all of your dishes are.
So that is it. And then you should definitely have that with a really cold beer. No, you should never. You should never have a tostada by itself.
And specifically beer, or what about a glass of wine and a cocktail?
I mean, of course, no, but I think at home, no, so we don't make people work, but you can work with a nice glass of cold wine. But I would personally have it just with a tecate on the can. That would be perfect.
Wonderful. Well, it's so beautiful. Just to take a moment, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of how the people that have tuned in can approach sourcing seafood? I loved what you said about choose something weird. If you're not familiar with it, it's a great bet. And maybe how they can think about approaching something they've never cooked before, likening it to something else. Oh, I know how to cook mussels, so I will be comfortable cooking cockles, or something like that.
I think the beauty of cooking at home is that you don't need to impress anyone. No, so be playful and just try to have fun at home. If you screw it up, it's okay. We screw up dishes all the time, but that's also the way you learn. So don't be afraid of making mistakes, and just enjoy the cooking. So if you grab something that is weird, and you don't know how to cook, there's also right now so many resources on the internet on how to cook things, and you'll also start to develop your own intuition on how to do things.
Thank you, Chef. Well, I hope I get to visit Pujol very, very soon. And we have one more chef next week who's going to be doing another tutorial. And that is, sorry, let me just check.
It's
Next
Vicky
week,
Lau,
yeah, Vicky Lau.
right?
Yes.
And then I think our really good friend David Cage.
Oh my gosh, David Kinch from Manresa is doing the last one. That's right. I've lost track of time. I no longer can use a calendar or a watch. It's a miracle that we made this work, because I can no longer tell what day it is, thanks to quarantine.
I know. Almost over.
Yes.
Almost over, hopefully.
Yes. Well, thank you, Chef. What a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Take care.